Everybody, Aaron here. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin part 2 of our Romans Age of Caesar community Q&A, because I forgot to do an intro and an outro because there were 2 parts. That's my bad. Now, as I said, this is part 2 of our community Q&A for Romans Age of Caesar. So if you haven't seen part 1, then you'll want to go do that right now before you start this one, because we answer up to 50 questions from Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Discord. If you want to see all the questions answered, then we highly recommend watching part 1. Now on to the second part of the Romans Q&A. Next we have Priest Guardian, who would love to participate in the alpha tests like he did with Stronghold Kingdoms.
Yeah, we'd love to have you. So just like with Stronghold Kingdoms, we're doing multiple alphas for the game. If you want to take part in those, sign up at playromans.com. You can pre-register. That means you'll get all the sort of latest gameplay news, screenshots, video, all that kind of good stuff. And you'll also be sort of top of the list when it comes to inviting people to our second alpha, our beta. Maybe if we do other alphas, you'll be invited to that. And we're really sort of looking to build this game with player feedback in mind. So if you want to get involved, you can get involved. Just go to playromans.com.
Next up we have King337 with, can this be as historically accurate as much as it can, please?
Absolutely, yeah. You can expect sort of beautiful pixel art recreations of the Colosseum, Trajan's Column, the Ludus Magnus, the Circus Maximus, and plenty of others. So visually, lots of sort of nice sort of 2D isometric attention to detail, and also just, you know, in the way that the Senate works, that'll be really realistic in terms of the trading between you know, Roman cities. That'll be, you know, fairly true to life. So expect more videos soon on the historical authenticity delivered by Aaron Hayden over here.
I know you're already looking forward to it. Next up we have Austin Young with, are the mechanics going to be updated from Stronghold Kingdoms? When I saw the map, I'm so pumped.
That's awesome. We were also pumped to show you the map. And we haven't actually revealed, the teaser trailer just contains like a small kind of snippet of the map. The final map's going to have, you know, multiple continents and lots of different countries, more so than kingdoms. So that'll be really interesting to reveal. But yeah, so we're looking at like all the lessons learned with Stronghold Kingdoms in terms of balancing, in terms of features, politics, for example. There's going to be more of a structure around that in Romans, so you're going to be negotiating your way to the top of the Senate with your silver tongue. You're going to be bartering and backstabbing your way up to the top of the Senate until eventually you can become Caesar for a certain period of time. So there's much more structure there in terms of the politics. And then with the core gameplay, obviously it's more of a city builder, so it's more about cooperating with your fellow governors to, you know, build, trade, and expand within your cities. So yeah, we're kind of looking to build on a lot of the mechanics of Stronghold Kingdoms that kind of took us by surprise and players kind of took ownership of as what they really enjoyed about the game and wasn't necessarily part of our sort of original plan for it.
Next we have BDKH. Caesar, he protect, he attack, but most importantly, he built the empire back.
That's going to be our first Romans meme we post from the account, if not like a box quote. Please actually leave that as a Steam review. Please make that the first Steam review. I'd love for that.
I mean, most Steam reviews are memes these days.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a really good one. So
that's a really good one.
Stick it up there.
Next, all-time Cora. Release date, question mark?
Yes, I am thinking about that. It's going to be sometime this year. We are currently in our first alpha with a few hundred players trying out the game, giving us feedback, helping us, you know, sort of iterate on the build that we currently have. And honestly, there are still, you know, big core gameplay systems that we haven't put in the game yet that still need to be added, lots of polish that needs to be done. We're planning at least one more alpha, and each alpha is going to last probably a couple of months at a time. And then we'll have a break between the alphas to give us time to actually implement a lot of the gameplay feedback. So at least 2 alphas, and then the commercial beta, which would probably be when everyone will be able to play it. But it's really going to depend on how much feedback we get, and you know,
getting a lot of feedback.
We're getting a lot of feedback, which is really good. But yeah, it's all going to depend on how the alphas go, and then. But yeah, we are definitely aiming for this year on PC.
Next is Hilty. Is it possible to play co-op with just one friend and PvE?
So yes, it is possible to play with one other player with PvE. Obviously, it's an MMO. So you're playing in a world with thousands of other players, but you can join the same city. Each city's up to 16 players, so obviously it's within that city's interest to be quite full. Yeah. Like, you don't want like 2 players in a city is not going to equal a good city. No. So you can do that. You can position your districts right next to each other. You can help defend against each other's barbarian attacks. So you can move your army across into their district, defend against the barbarians there. But it's very much a MMO. So you can play with other people. You can focus on the PvE element. That's totally up to you. And there's more protections in there in terms of PvP than there was in Stronghold Kingdoms. But yeah, it's an MMO. You're kind of encouraged to do that, but you can play with other players, you know, in the same city and defend against local barbarian threats and eventually, you know, Empire map barbarian threats.
Next we have Olin Evans with CivCity was the bollocks back in the day.
That's actually quite a good Welsh accent. Cue all our commenters to disagree. It was indeed the bollocks, and we are hoping to channel that kind of nostalgia you have for those games into the new ones. So both Caesar and Stronghold Next will have that kind of classic gameplay that you love from our earlier titles.
Indeed.
Hopefully. And I really want that to be the first user review. Caesar 3 was the bollocks. Romans was the bollocks.
Make it happen, Olin.
10 out of 10.
Next we have Eagle Eyes. I love the idea of cooperative city building and politics in this type of game.
Good. I mean, that's definitely the kind of focus for Romans. I'd say the two things that kind of set it apart from Stronghold Kingdoms would be the co-op city building, which is quite new and quite different. You share resources, you kind of mine each other's resources. So instead of it just being like a central parish capital like you had in Stronghold Kingdoms, each city is kind of a microcosm of that, if that makes sense. And you've actually got to kind of rely on your neighbours. So the more neighbours you have and the better they're doing, the better you're doing. So that's quite new and complex, and it kind of makes more of the online gameplay, I think. And on the political side, there's a whole like structured Senate game that you're going to have to go through with the kind of end goal of becoming Caesar, but you can become sort of other positions within the Senate. And one of the reasons we're running alpha at the moment is, and you know, the upcoming alphas, is to test those kind of systems because they are quite new, they are quite different. So we want to make sure we get them absolutely right before we release the game. Yeah,
it's got that very fine, delicate balance of you can just go in there and put all your energy into it and be really good. Yeah. But then you're still all the time helping your city as well, which is like quite unheard of for online games. Yeah. So yeah, it's a very fine, delicate balance we've got going on, which is very exciting. Next we have Brandon, and perhaps Nick, you can answer one of his hopes and prayers for Romans Age of Caesar. He says, I hope that this game will have classic sprite animations. Ah, well, your prayers and hopes are answered, my friend. Yeah, for our online titles, we like to use the classic sort of isometric 2D style for our online games, so you can definitely look forward to that. So while you're kind of waiting for your buildings to construct, you know, surveying the barbarian threats and all those kind of, you know, things you'll be doing in your sort of downtime, you can admire your beautifully constructed district and the center of the city, which will have, you know, beautiful sort of pixel renditions of, you know, we've said this before, but like the Circus Maximus and all these kind of beautiful sort of Roman buildings that you'd expect in a city builder. Next up we have another regular, Tenryu, who's a very talented Stronghold 2 map maker. He simply says, I love Firefly Studios, therefore I love this game. Oh, it's that simple. That's nice. We love you too, Tenryu. And we love your fantastic map building work that goes on, so keep it up. Keep it up. And please contribute to the Romans community in the same way. Next we have Tony N with a open-mindedness about him, which I appreciate. He says, MMO sounds difficult to me, but hey, first I'll check the alpha and see what you have designed. Yeah, check it out. Like, playromans.com, you can pre-register for the game. You'll probably get invited to the second alpha if you register now. But yeah, we're definitely taking all the kind of feedback from Stronghold Kingdoms, the good and the bad, you know. There are a few things about Romans already that, you know, I could say have improved from Kingdoms. There's improved balancing. It's easier to rebuild if you've been attacked. There's better incentives for cooperating with other players and just better sort of protection in general for solo players if you want to play it that way. So we are taking all that feedback on board for the game and try and improve on those areas. All right, next we have Jude Patina. Hope my advisor won't stab me in the back. Your advisor won't, but other players might. So our advice to you would be join the game with people you know, people you trust. But just keep an eye on them because you could get to the sort of final stage at the top of the Senate when you're just about to become Caesar, and then Jeff suddenly turns around, stabs you right in the back to take the crown for himself. Well, you know, Nick, the best resolution to not being stabbed in the back. Go on. Stab everyone else in the back. You heard it here first. Next, Ultimate Porner, with simply, is it in Italy?
It is set in Italy. The Empire map is obviously a bit bigger than just Italy. You're going to have a vast explorable area with multiple countries and continents to kind of march across, trade across, battle across. But yeah, you're going to have lots of space to explore. And fun fact, the tutorial area is currently Sicily. So you'll start off in Sicily and you'll be able to sort of learn the ropes and be protected from the sort of larger barbarian forces at play. And then once you're ready to leave the tutorial area, you get to move over to Italy, and that's when you're properly part of the Roman Empire and subject to all the threats.
That's where it becomes every senator for himself.
Exactly.
Next up we have Danny C. You guys made Caesar 1, 2, 3. OMG! Wow! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. I thought it was Sierra. Those games were my jam.
Oh, they were many people's jams. It technically wasn't Firefly. Sierra Online or Sierra Entertainment, or I can't remember exactly what they were called. They published the games, and then they were developed by a company called Impressions Games, and which Simon and Eric both worked at the time. So Simon did some of the design, the coding. Eric did production on the Caesar series, and then Darren and Rob, who both work with us still, they did the art direction and music. So there's actually a fairly strong ex-Impressions Caesar sort of DNA going on at Firefly.
Yeah, the old guard.
The old guard.
Reunited.
Yeah.
Next we have Goldcap Ozturk. We finally saw Eric.
You did finally see Eric. He came over for the Christmas party, and I made sure him, Aaron, and Simon had like an hour in a room downstairs together to kind of get some sort of footage for a Romans Q&A, as it was a rare opportunity to have them in the same room at the same time. You should check out the interview if you haven't already, and look forward to hopefully more Romans content featuring Eric, because I'd like to be able to, he was such a big part of the Caesar games and the production side, so I'd love to be able to bring him forward and have him featured in more content.
It was a big milestone in my conquest to get everybody at Firefly in front of a camera. Everybody.
It'll happen eventually.
It happened eventually.
It's a few remaining, but yeah. We'll get you.
Next we have Alexei Rivers. So is it going to be something like Stronghold Kingdoms plus Caesar?
There are going to be lots of Stronghold Kingdoms elements in the game. So, you're going to have base building, but it's going to have this kind of co-op layer on top of it. So it's going to encourage more sort of cooperating with your fellow players. There is going to be sort of, attacking and defending against AI threats. Going to be more sort of RTS elements in the game. So there'll be a bit more control over your forces. It won't just be like setting them up and go. And there'll be certain attacks that you can trigger. There's going to be a sort of political elements to the game again. But there's going to be more structure around that with the Senate and how you kind of progress up that. And then the end game is also going to involve sort of, grabbing territory and conquering territory and sort of holding that territory. But there'll be a little sort of extra spin on that as well. So lots of familiar sort of kingdom systems, but with an extra sort of layer on top.
Moving swiftly on, we have Jesse Turkzak with Is This Stronghold Next?
Sorry, Jesse. This is not Stronghold Next.
It is not Stronghold Next. Stronghold Next reveal spring 2019. Next, Mr. Maslow. Wait, you're working on 2 games at the same time?
We are. And depending on your definition of developer, there's about 15, 20 of them at Firefly. So 2 games, one of which is an MMO, is actually quite a lot for a studio. So, well, technically we have Stronghold Kingdoms as well, so it's 3. But that's kind of what our focus is now and our limit. And we do a lot of, a lot of work for a small team. So, yes, support independent developers.
Next, Simon Binney. I'm a massive fan of Caesar 3, so excited to see it after all this time. New game will be amazing if it comes even slightly close to this.
Yeah, well, we are looking to add lots of classic city builder elements to the game. Obviously, the core gameplay is quite reminiscent of those titles. And we're also looking to add those kind of little touches. We can't, unfortunately, add cheats because it's an online game, so it would unbalance things somewhat. But we're looking to add little things that remind you of those games and little sort of nostalgia Easter eggs in there. And someone, it might have been me, has already taken the name Plebs Are Needed.
Plebs Are Needed.
So we're more than aware of the sort of heritage of those games.
For the second time this Q&A, we have Pluckout Wolf again with, are there plans for a similar but non-free-to-play game?
Not currently. Obviously, we're a small developer, so an MMO and a paid Stronghold game, that's going to kind of take up all our mind share. But we're super excited about the new setting, and we're definitely kind of looking at what the comments are and seeing what kind of demand there is for a game like that, because it's, we're self-publishing now, so it'll be totally our choice to do that in the future if we wanted to. But if you want it, I would just say make as much noise as possible under every Romans video, pre-register for Romans, try it out, you know, like all the videos, and just make as much noise as possible in the comments so that it kind of slowly seeps into the Firefly hive mind.
Next is Bampy. How long do you envisage the closed alpha going on for before you release the closed beta version?
Well, the first alpha is currently sort of on track for what we thought it was going to be, which is a couple of months, and then we'll take some time to, you know, implement a lot of the feedback, fix a lot of the bugs that people raised, and then depending on how many features we add to the second alpha, it could take slightly longer, maybe like a month extra to test, and then I would imagine a few months between that and our sort of commercial launch, which would be the beta. So it's hard to say at the moment. That's why we're just saying 2019, because you know, we're still adding sort of core gameplay systems to the game. But if you want to play it before anyone else, you know where to go. playromans.com.
So that was the second part of our Romans community Q&A. Firstly, I want to thank you so much for watching. Secondly, I want to say if you have any more questions or queries or giant question marks about Romans Age of Caesar or its development or how we're treating it as a game in the studio, then leave those in the comment section below, because we do our best to read every single YouTube comment that gets put in that comment section. Although most of them these days are where is Stronghold next. That is still being worked on, don't worry, it's still coming, don't worry, chill out. But for now, if you do like the look of Romans Age of Caesar, you can pre-register for the game at playromans.com. Head over there, enter your details, it's super easy, super quick, and you might even be with a chance of getting into our alpha test. If not, certainly get into our beta later down the line. And yeah, by now you guys know the drill. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell to stay up to date with everything Firefly Studios, and we'll see you next week.